Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to Stars of NUST. I'm your host, Sana Zafar. हम आपको मिलवाते हैं NUST के brilliant graduates से from all across the globe और आज के special guest ने हमें join किया है from Bonn, Germany. And I'm very excited for today's interview because of many reasons. He happens to be my batchmate. He happens to be married to another batchmate of mine. And he's also the first PhD doctor of our batch. And I'm quite confident he's also the last one as well. We have with us Dr. Zubair Shahid. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Zubair. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I think before all else, I have to commend you and the team behind this for this wonderful initiative. I see how much effort goes in preparing it logistically. But apart from that, I think it's a great initiative which will go miles in not only increasing the visibility of the great job that the NUST graduates are doing around the world, but also help the students and graduates of NUST and hopefully beyond to have some kind of reference points as they chart their own respective paths. But having said this, I'd like to thank you again for inviting me. I think seeing the stars that have previously been featured on this series, I'm honestly quite humbled, but also consider myself undeservedly privileged to be featured amongst them. You may have mistaken a blip for a star, but well, as they say, وَإِزَّةُ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَذِلَّةُ مَنْ تَشَاءُ. So I hope that my experiences until now do help someone chart their own trajectory. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for all the compliments, and you're being too humble, too modest. Definitely you're a star. We want to learn from you. Zubair ne NUST se graduate kiya back in 2008. He completed his BBA. Currently, he is fellow at Knowledge Center for Sustainable Development, United Nations Systems, Staff College. आइए इनसे मिलते हैं, थोड़ा सा और पूछने की कोशिश करते हैं. Zubair, please tell me, how are you doing? How is Aisha? How is Zidan, your son? And how is Bon?
Well, everything is fine, fortunately. In these times, if you're not coughing, then it's good news for everyone. But I think, Bon is good. Germany has been really nice. Mashallah, the family is doing well. Schools and work and life, everything, there's nothing to complain of. So,
is it a fun city to be?
Well, I always say it's big enough not to be bored and small enough not to get lost. I think it's a fun city to be. We don't get much of a chance to, especially for the last 2 years. Yeah. We've been locked in the city most of the time. It's enough. It's there's enough to do and go around and just generally have fun. So it's a good city to live in.
That sounds fun before COVID at least. उसके बाद तो I think it's the same story everywhere. हम start करेंगे NBS के time से. Please थोड़ा सा बताइएगा, how was your time at NBS? Or I'm really looking for some interesting and fun memories. Please share something with us.
NBS time, though, surely this was one of the most interesting periods of my life, because it was the first time I moved away from my house. As a 16, 17-year-old guy, when I moved out of the house and I started off there, so there were very many interesting experiences, both at the university and also outside. So, how they say learning is always, partly this is in the classroom, but a lot of the learning happens extramurally. Mm-hmm. So that happens outside of those confines. And I think from that standpoint, it was one of the most formative periods of my life. NUST as a university, my time, I think, was challenging, academically speaking. A lot of new things to learn, which was good. Many interesting friendships made, many interesting people I came across, many inspiring faculty members that I came across, and some of them continue to be reference points for me, even if they're no longer around, or I don't interact with them on very frequent basis. But I think it was extremely fun. हम हमेशा ये कहते थे कि 4 महीने का सेमेस्टर होता है, तो उसमें हम 3 महीने 20 दिन जो है ना, हम पार्टी करते हैं, 8 दिन पैनिक करते हैं और 2 दिन पढ़ाई करते हैं. लेकिन somehow we managed to pass. But I think it was a very well-rounded experience, and I think it enabled me to take advantage of many opportunities that came my way later on.
जी बिल्कुल, आपके बात से मुझे अभी भी ख्याल आ रहा है कि in the first few semesters we used to get a week off right before finals. और वो वीक यूज्ड टू बी सो स्ट्रेसफुल बिकॉज हम शुरू में बिल्कुल भी नहीं पढ़ते थे, सिर्फ स्ट्रेस लेते थे। एंड मैं तो स्पेशली बस टाइम टेबल्स बनाती रहती थी, इस दिन ये पढ़ना है, ये पढ़ना है, ये पढ़ना है, और एट द एंड सिर्फ लास्ट डे होता था जब हम सब कुछ पढ़ रहे होते थे। दैट यूज्ड टू बी अ लॉट ऑफ स्ट्रेस एंड अ लॉट ऑफ फन एट द सेम टाइम।
हम उस एक हफ्ते के अंदर मी एंड माय फ्रेंड्स आई थिंक हम लोग सिर्फ ये देख रहे थे कि नोट्स किससे लेने हैं। तो उस हफ्ते के 7 दिनों में से 6 दिन तो ये सिर्फ हमारे नोट्स गैदर करने में लग जाते थे, लेकिन आखिरी दिन पढ़ते थे, करते थे।
Yeah, I remember boys from our class as well used to say कि इस week से बहुत फर्क पड़ता है because boys are just playing games and partying and girls are stressing out and at the end they
That's
end up
quite true.
getting grades.
Yeah,
So
that's
yes,
quite true.
stressful but a lot of fun. So do you miss it? Do you want to mention any friend, any teachers in particular?
Me, certainly. I mean, I miss it, and I'm still in touch with many of the friends even now. So I think that has continued. So there's not much to miss in that sense because most of the contacts, most of the friends, etc., those friendships have lasted till now. In terms of teachers, of course, there were some who had very lasting impact on me. In our very first semester, we had this one teacher who would teach us Islamic studies. Colonel Qayyum. I think he was one of the people who planted some very important and worth retaining seeds in the mind. Right. So he is definitely one of the people who has been a highlight. Mama's Bad used to be another. And then I think there was this one. I mean, I find it a bit odd to take names of the teachers here because each one of them I think had a very important role to play. Sir Sabir Jafri, halaki accounting mein unke sath zyada tha, and I didn't pursue that career track, but I think that he was one of the people who really broke down something which was essentially very dry and very complex into something which was digestible and understandable. So, I mean, everyone was pretty influential and worth remembering and worth cherishing in their own right.
True. That's very true. We have been very lucky. We had some really, really good teachers, I'm sure. थोड़ा सा आपकी प्रोफेशनल जर्नी पे आएंगे, प्लीज बताइएगा जब आपने ग्रेजुएट कर लिया उसके बाद क्या हुआ, कितनी प्लान थी, यू हैड a certain change in career as well in your path. How did it all work out for you?
Well, I was lucky enough that my chances that I took worked out for me. So while I did my degree in finance and investment, in the initial years at NUST, I also had internships which were at very good companies, but they were not necessarily related to finance and investment. So my first internship was in the area of HR. My second one was in the area of corporate and regulatory affairs. So that was the first time I tried to see a bit of the policy side of things. But then by virtue of other interests, university mein I used to be active in some other events, debating mein hote the, dramatics, debating, some other exchanges where you get to engage with issues and life beyond what business school would focus on. But by the end of it, I think in my third year or something, and I would blame youthful idealism for that I lost track or I wouldn't say lost, but I considerably had a lower interest in pursuing a career and a life which was focused on, like the business side or finance side, and I was more interested in the social and public affairs. And I think the seeds for that too were sown during my time within university, but also beyond the university. But I'll get to that later. So right after I graduated, I joined this newly launched English news channel in Pakistan. So this was a hard left into the world of journalism, broadcast journalism instead of pursuing a career in banking. And what I had, my other options were to go into a banking stream, but I did not go there. And then while I was doing that, I started my master's in public policy, which brought me more towards the economic side of things. Or again, this was a very enlightening experience for me, because yahan pe I had the privilege of being under the wings and learning from some of the best brains in Pakistan when it comes to economic policy. People like Dr. Fiz Pasha, Dr. Akmal Hussain, Sartaj Aziz Saab. who has been a foreign minister, who's been a finance minister. So, theory was important, but in addition to theory, these were the guys who could give you very important insights of why is it that these things have not really worked. So this was a very, I think, insightful experience at that stage for me, because I had a lot of questions, which were on, like, how are these socio-economic dynamics in Pakistan? Why is it that things tend to be so rigid and don't really change? And why is it that we don't find the answers? And a lot of those things got clarified during this experience. And right after graduating from my master's, I started working for this World Bank supported initiative on poverty alleviation. I was based in Islamabad, and तकरीबन एक साल I worked there. And this was in 2009, 2010. Towards the end of 2010, I got a fellowship opportunity to pursue research and graduate studies in the area of transition economics. So I relocated to Prague in the Czech Republic at the Center of Economic Research. So the idea there was that here was this institution which was researching very heavily on transition economics. So the CIS countries' key economies, as they are now moving from controlled economies to more free market-based economies, what kind of structural transitions should come by. And I thought that this is a very interesting area of research and a very interesting area to be engaged in now, because most of the issues that I saw in Pakistan, I always had one eye there, that how could you find the solutions to these issues, right? And I thought that maybe the answers could be found here. As we examine how the transitions take place, maybe you can find some explanations and insights there. But it was a bit too theoretical, and I thought that there had to be a little bit of a more policy angle to it. So in 2011, I then shifted my base, and I started my PhD in Italy at the University of Trento, where the program was in development economics largely. And I worked there on issues related to governance, public sector reform, decentralization, and economic development. So while this was what I focused on in my PhD research, but यहाँ पे I also started teaching at the graduate level. So I taught about 3-4 cohorts for this joint European master's program, which was funded by the Erasmus Mundus. So this was a great opportunity for me. I was also a younger guy, and most of my students were actually either of my current age or even older. So every time I would walk into the classroom, it was very humbling, but a very enriching experience at the same time. And I think during this time, I also landed my feet in the UN system for the first time. So I started working with the UN Research Institute on Social Development, which was based in Geneva. So I worked there for a little bit of time, and then by the time my PhD finished, I had an opportunity to work with the UN in Bonn. So I moved to Bonn, Germany in 2015, and I started working with UNESCO. वहाँ पे my role was more on the lines of bridging the gap between education, the world of education, and the world of work. So very interesting experiences where I worked in different roles. Knowledge development was one. There was also the slightly more bureaucratic monitoring and evaluation. But one of the most exciting part of that job was where I was working or coordinating regions. So first I was co-coordinating the Asia-Pacific region, so 52 countries. We would coordinate with government officials, ministries के साथ or national bodies के साथ. And you would get a very good idea of, you have this overall international narrative, then you've got the theory, and then you've got this, extreme plurality of experiences in the different countries around the world. Soon after that, I got redesignated. So I started doing coordinating another region, which was Middle East and North Africa. Again, a lot of things there related to what I had experienced in Pakistan. So I had a good reference point. So that was very interesting. And then after that, I made another switch within the UN system. And now I'm working with the UN Staff College, where my role is essentially that of research and training and policy advice to the UN entities, but also in some cases we are reaching out to government functionaries around the world. So that's pretty much my experience till now.
That's a very, very interesting and a very unique journey. I mean, this is not the kind of journey you will get to hear from our graduates, from NBS graduates, I mean. So it's very interesting. And I really like that, even if you wanted to go in that certain direction, there were so many things which were so new for you. I think most of it was not predictable. Most of it was like it just happened and you realized, wow, this also happens in this very world, and this is how it's in theory, and this is how you realize it in reality. So I'm really glad to hear this kind of story as well. That's very different and very, very interesting. I hope people can learn from it. And I hope you too keep on enjoying it and keep on going further. It's just one point. Inshallah, you'll go a lot farther, inshallah. So, learning such an interesting journey. I also want to ask you कि आपके पास कोई tips हैं for new graduates, for younger alumni or students who want to kind of follow the same path that you did? Would you recommend people at NBS, because जितनी आपने changes की बात की, would you like people to try something like that?
Most certainly. And I think everyone should have this in their mind that, look, the world out there will require you to make many switches. That applies to professional life as well as personal life. So being flexible and retaining the ability or nurturing your own ability to learn across your lifetime, right? So I think that's very important, because that will enable you to access a broader pool of opportunities, acquire a greater set of capabilities. So generally, I think I'm very averse to this idea of just sticking to one line. Just when I was even younger, I would think about, bade hoke maine se fauj mein jana hai. When you get into a university, in a program like business school mein, your finance investment mein, then you think of yourself as either working in the financial sector, or you'll just make a switch but stay still within the corporate sector. But I think there's a world outside it. And I remember that a few years ago, I was at NUST, where I had a chance to engage with some of the students at the School of Humanities. Or wahan pe I was a bit amazed, because everyone seemed to have this one North Star they were following, which was that of CSS.
Oh.
And I said, yeah, again, the world is a lot more than just that. The opportunities are much more. So please, through platforms such as the Stars of NUST, it's always good, listen to other people's experiences. This is not there to just inspire you. These experiences are also there to let you know of the pitfalls or the potholes that you need to avoid. And in a lot of ways, I don't consider my experience to be something which is an exemplar of any sort. But yes, there are certainly ways in which people, I hope that this makes them think you have possibilities. आप एक degree करके निकलो, but then as long as you can always make a switch into something else for which you have some foundational skills. To make connected jumps, but don't be too drastic that after finishing your bachelor's in business, you start pursuing a master's in aeronautical engineering. That's never going to work, right? So as long as there's some relevance, you've got the soft skills, you've got the basic core functional skills that equip you to make these jumps and the transitions. I think life becomes much more easier.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very realistic tip there. And you're right. हम थोड़ा सा defined career paths की तरफ ही जाते हैं, हम इतना explore नहीं कर रहे होते, and we do get stuck. और आपने ये जो बात की है CSS वाली, I think that started in our time. A lot of people started looking in that direction. Some of our class fellows did that as well. Mashallah, they did well, but that doesn't mean it would work out for everyone, and it's the only path you can follow or something like that. So that's great. आपसे हम इंटरव्यू रैप अप करने के लिए एक और क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहते हैं, जो सेगमेंट हमारे नाम है अवाम का सवाल. We reach out to friends of our guest and ask them if they have some questions. Since reaching out to your friends was not a problem for me, I have a question from Fahmeen for you. Fahmeen wants to ask, कि आपने कौन सा, which was the silliest excuse you came up with at NBS times to avoid anything, and did it work?
Oh, yeah. My silliest excuses. Well, one of them was, and see, now this is where I could actually inspire some people. So my mom was the only child of my grandparents, but to get out of assignments, to get out of late submissions and all, I have killed so many khalas and mamus in my time that
Oh my God.
I lost count. So I think that's definitely one of the most inhumane, but one of the more, and I'd also say innovative excuses to make. So, and it's troubling how I'm not even ashamed of it. So,
I was about to say, doesn't look like it.
So, yeah.
I don't see any remorse on your face. Looks like you still enjoy
but
it.
it got me through. So
That's
yeah, that's the silliest excuse.
Yeah, actually Fahmeen ने एक और question भी पूछा था जिसका आंसर मुझे already पता था, so we are not including that and we are not going that path. She asked me to ask you who was you, somebody who would really scare you at NBS out of teachers or somebody, and I said not the teacher, but I know who would, and I don't want to.
That was your dad. That was your dad. So
most definitely, I know.
So every time you would walk into the door, into the gate of the university, the first thing you would have to do is check if you were wearing your tie and your card correctly. So clearly, I mean, there we have a clear winner.
Yes. Yeah, we're not going in that direction. But yeah, definitely fun time. Thank you so much, Zubair. बहुत मजा आ रहा है आपसे बात करने का. बहुत interesting journey है आपकी. It's very unique, and we wish you all the best. We hope we can bring Aisha on board as well someday, or we'll be in touch. And hopefully, as Stars of NUST go further, maybe we'll invite you again. Maybe we'll invite you for a panel discussion for some helpful tips for the kids back, especially at S3H and at NBS, etc. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm glad I could be of some use. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. Allah Hafiz.